Hello and welcome, everybody, to the 15th episode of the Ramblings of Random Minds podcast with a very special edition. I am your guest, Alex Starrett, and this is my host, Micah.
Glad to be back. Glad to be hosting. I'm sorry to mess with the format this week, but I'm excited to do this. I think this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain, or shall I?
You're the host.
Okay, I'll host away. So, I'm currently recording this on our phone as well. This is going to be for one of my classes for occupational therapy. And so I have a topic in mind for one of these projects. And I'm going to get Alex's thoughts. So, Alex, today, as I told you, you are my informant. Now I can stop being so mysterious and I'll reveal my first question.
Okay.
So.
And I do consent to this.
Fantastic. Yes, we consented off recording, but now we can send it on, which is perfect. So yes, thank you so much for agreeing to talk with me today. All right. So Alex, what is the first thing you think of when you hear the word creativity?
First thing that comes to mind is Dungeons and Dragons, because that's the kind of way I express my creativity. Music would probably be another one, because the same reason. Creativity, like innovative or like changing thing, not changing, but like creativity leads to change. That's how I'd answer that.
Awesome. Amazing. Any other thoughts you want to add to it? That's great if that's all you want to say, but you can add something if you like.
Creativity. For some reason I'm thinking of the color orange.
Okay, fantastic. All right, the second question for you is, how do you define creativity?
Defining creativity. That's a tough one. I would say I just had something and now I forget. Kind of like creating new things and like going through processes to create new things, and being creative is like why am I struggling so much?
It's all right.
Pressure.
It's all right. I understand, and it's a tricky question. Take your time.
Yeah, I'd say just like kind of like being creative is like thinking about things you haven't thought before and like kind of creating things that, like, whether that be like characters in a story or like different melodies and music. That's how I would do that. Answer that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. My third question for you is, do you think that creativity can be learned as opposed to being innate, something that you're born with or you're not?
To certain degrees. Like, I feel like you can encourage creativity, and the more you encourage it, the more, the more that can grow, like, because if you're encouraging it, you're being more creative and being creative more. That's a lot of using the same words in different meanings. But I think there is, like, an innateness to it as well. Like, not everybody can be creative, but not everybody is as creative as another person. Like, some people are just like rule followers, or like, not that rule followers is like an opposite to creativity, but like it's like very like stick to what already has become, and like that just kind of like a personality. But I feel like it can be encouraged and developed.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're getting with that. Awesome. Okay, who or what inspires you to be creative?
Oh goodness, that's a tough one. I suppose just different like means of being creative and different platforms of being creative, like Dungeons and Dragons, for example, or like music. I've used those before, but like just like, or like having a world to be in, like Star Trek, Harry Potter, like having a starting point and like building on that and like immersing myself in that is probably what inspires me to be creative. And I suppose like just people who are creative generally inspire me to be creative as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Any examples?
Um, John Williams probably.
Yeah.
Like with music, like not that I'll get anywhere near his brilliance, but that's what I aspire to. I always set bars way too high for myself, so.
I think that's a great one. I think that's a really good one. Okay, awesome. Thank you. In what settings do you like to express yourself? So you kind of talked about this a little bit already, but
Like express my creativity, or like how do you mean?
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. What settings would I express myself? Yeah, like kind of through. For me personally, I feel like it has to be like organized. It's hard for me to like just be like, I'm gonna be creative right now. Like I kind of like plan ahead, like Dungeons and Dragons. It's like this is the time to be creative. This is the time to do other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when talking to a camera, oddly enough, I'm more creative or more myself, kind of, or more confident almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say that.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, what do you do in your day that nurtures your creativity?
What do I do in.
So it doesn't have to be daily, maybe something you do every day, but at least a few times a week. What do you find yourself doing that you think nurtures your creativity?
Learning, I'd say, like going to school and just like learning about different things, thinking about different things, and being encouraged to think about different things. Um, in regards to like music specifically, like I'm in band and choir, which helps me develop skills which allow me to be creative and like manipulate those skills to what I want to happen. And without learning, like there's no real way of being creative. I feel like.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit for me?
Like for creativity to happen, you need to encourage it and set time aside to do that. And you're confined to what you know for the most part. Like you can build off what you know through like how do I put this? Creativity, like you can be creative if you know nothing and like build on that, but the more you know, the more you have to build upon to create more things and be more creative. Totally. If that makes any sense.
I think that makes sense. I think that makes total sense. Yeah. Okay, next question is, how do you engage with your own creativity and the creativity of others?
How do I engage with... Well, I kind of like point back to like Dungeons and Dragons and like, especially dungeon mastering, or like when I'm focused on like the background of a character, like just focusing on like certain things and like kind of like creating a world or like immersing myself in a world. I feel like it like that's kind of how I engage myself with creativity. And like again, Dungeons and Dragons, like in a campaign or like in a session, like you can kind of bounce ideas off of different people, or really in general, like that's the best way of being creative, is by bouncing ideas off other people. And just to use the example of D&D, like it how do I put this? In the example of D&D, it's like you can like set something up, but then somebody can come up with like a completely other idea, and then something that you haven't really considered or wouldn't normally consider has come up, and you kind of just run with that, like causing you to be creative in different ways, which I think is very beneficial.
Yeah, totally. And then you get to play off of one another because of that.
Yeah,
very cool. What personal experiences have you had, if you have specific experiences, that's great, that have developed your own definition of creativity? So maybe you once thought of it one way and it's changed your definition or helped define it a little bit more clearly.
So, what experiences have I had that has changed my perception of creativity? I like. I feel like just learning about different means of expressing creativity has, like, Dungeons and Dragons, for example. Yeah, like just learning about different ways to do things to open up new doors, I'd say, is one. Like band, choir, like learning more about music. Sticking really close to those two things.
No, that's fair. That's fair. If those are the ones that jump out, that's totally fine. That's great. And it sounds like those are two very different ways of expressing creativity that you've grown to love.
Yeah,
I think that's true.
I'd also say like listening to like podcasts that like present different ideas or different ways of doing things. Like again, like my D&D example, I listened to a Dungeons and Dragons podcast and like I've gotten a lot of ideas from that. So like that, I suppose, just learning from how other people are creative and like what other people create, like also kind of builds upon. I can't really give a specific example, but say that.
No, I think that's awesome. I think that's really great. Okay, the next question here. So, do you believe that creativity comes easily to you? And if it does, why? If it doesn't, why not?
It definitely, I feel like once I'm like sitting down and being creative, like things start going, but to actually start, it normally takes a lot of time and effort. I don't know if effort would be the right word. Like for me, I'm very like math and science focused on like following a process, and creativity is basically the counter opposite of that. So it's like for writing, for example, like if I'm writing an essay in school or like whatever I'm writing, like when I start, like I don't get anything down for like an hour, maybe not that long, but a good amount of time. But then once I like get started and like then stuff like kind of just like flows out of me and like it it's yeah.
Totally. Yeah, so sometimes it sounds like you're saying it takes some time sometimes for it to gain steam, but when it does, it does come fairly easily.
Yeah.
Anything you would add to that or change about that statement?
Yeah, I suppose just like it takes a bit of time to get going, but then once I start going, then it's easy for me. Or not even easy, but like it just I wouldn't really add a whole lot to that, but I feel like that sums it up.
Totally good. Okay, the next question is, are there any educational practices or environments that you feel hinder the development of your creativity? And the part B to that question is sort of the opposite. Any educational practices or environments that you believe help foster your development of creativity or encourage it?
I feel like personally things that hinder it are time limits.
Yeah.
Like the kind, like going back to what I said, like it takes time to actually start going, but once I'm going, like I can go on for a little while. But like if it's say like a 2-hour time limit and it takes me an hour to get going, that's that much less time to like do it. And then like if I stop, then it's quite difficult to actually get going again. It's like repeating the same process.
Right.
So yeah, like time limits, anything that there's like a time limit for, I'd say would be difficult. Also personally, like the format in which I'm doing it, like being creative rather, like if I'm like writing it by hand versus like by computer, like that's very difficult. Or like writing paragraphs, and instead of focusing on being creative, I'm focusing on like sentence structure and like punctuation and that sort of thing. I feel like that, like, it makes it a little bit more difficult just focusing on certain things. But if I'm like just trying to get ideas down and like making bullet points and kind of doing it in the style, if that makes sense, that I want to, then
Yeah.
I feel like that makes it easier.
Yeah. Any other points you want to add on educational practices or environments that foster your creativity? You touched on it a little bit. You don't need to, but if you have any other thoughts.
I suppose like being in a quiet space helps for me personally. Like,
Yeah.
it's good to be in like small groups and like bouncing ideas, but like if you can't really hear people, or if I'm like doing a project on my own, like I feel like having distractions all around like interrupts the creative process, if that's
Yeah.
like,
Totally.
yeah. So I'd say quieter spaces, or like more, not really isolated spaces, but just like less people around, and less stuff. Like at home, it's a little bit hard because like, oh, I can do this, oh, I can do this, oh, I can do this, but really I should just be being creative. Or yeah, so I'd say that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, well said. Okay, how do you feel you can enhance your own ability for creativity?
I suppose just setting more time aside to being creative and learning more about like different methods to be creative, like improv, for example, or like improvisation.
Yeah.
That took me a second. Like just learning different techniques to like get started, and like speeding up the like block at first, and then getting going. Another thing kind of to this question and also to the last, the past weekend, or maybe it's the weekend before, time flies, my family and I went to like a cabin that there's no Wi-Fi, and I found that really helped my focus, because like my phone wasn't buzzing constantly, and like it really helped me focus in on what I wanted to do, and like experiencing the like being bored and not being constantly like, oh, I'm bored, so I'm gonna pick up my phone and play a game, watch a video, whatever.
Yeah.
Like I feel like being bored really helps creativity as well. So yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Okay, I think I've said awesome a lot, but I like your answers a lot. How do you think practical experience or real world application contributes to the cultivation of creativity?
So say that again, sorry?
Yeah, no problem. How do you think practical experiences or real world applications contribute to the cultivation of creativity?
So like, as opposed to learning something in a book, like actually doing it, will like how that may
That's right.
increase creativity, basically. Yeah, like being directly in front of something, or like directly experiencing something, is definitely a lot more beneficial. And like if you're like reading from a book, or like doing things removed from it, like there's that technology aspect distracting you. So how real world, like, what else? Yeah, I'm not sure if...
That's good.
Yeah, I think...
That's great.
that's all.
Yeah. If that's what you got for that one, that's awesome. No problem. Okay, just a few more questions. I think 4 more. Next one is, what are some things that you find limit or hinder your ability to be creative? We talked about it a little bit in terms of environments and learning scenarios.
Yeah.
And now if you have any other thoughts more generally.
I feel like generally, like, distractions is probably the top thing. Yeah, distractions would be number 1, and like just number 2 would in today's society, just not being bored at all, because like when you're bored, then you need to be creative in what you're gonna do. Like you don't have, oh, I'm just gonna pick up my phone, because there's constant entertainment always in really just today's society.
Yeah.
So I'd say that definitely helps creativity. Um, and like, yeah,
Anything else
hinders as
that
well.
yeah, anything else that limits it?
Um, hmm. Anything else that limits creativity? It's being told what to think and do, I suppose. Like, kind of going back to that technology aspect, but like if you're constantly being told like what to think and what to do, you don't have time to think
Hmm.
for yourself, like in the media and whatnot, or like not that you're being told what to do when like you're bored and then pick up your phone to play a game or watch a video, but like it just kind of the way technology works, it's like it's it slowly gets into your habits and then
Right.
it's instinctual to just go to that first rather than take a second and think about what you could do instead that's either more beneficial or just more fun because like I think we can all agree that being on our phones is generally not super fun. Like it's like, oh, where did that 2 hours go, sort of thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'd say that. I'd go with that.
Yeah. Well said. Okay. What are some important things that you have learned about creativity, either from others or through your own experience?
Important things I've learned about creativity. Hmm. Well, well, I feel like through experience, like kind of going back to the things I said earlier, but like I didn't realize how beneficial being bored was until fairly recently. Like when it comes to creativity, like being disconnected from the things that are constantly making you see them or distracting you, and like just like making you want to do other stuff that you may not necessarily want to do or you may want to do, but it I feel like just disconnecting really helps. Yeah, it's important to creativity, and that's I feel like I've learned that recently. Do you mind saying the question again?
Yeah, no problem. What are some important things that you've learned about creativity from others or from your own experience? I think that's a good answer. If
Yeah,
you have
I feel
other
like
thoughts, that's
giving it time as well would be another thing that
okay.
I'd say,
Okay, yeah.
just from my own experience, and like, yeah, I'd go with that.
Okay. And how do you think cultural or societal factors influence the development or creativity through either education or through practical learning and hands-on experience?
So like how society like kind of affects it, or like education more specifically, or kind of like a bit of both.
So, if you're looking at creativity through either education or through practical experience,
Yeah.
how do you think that societal factors influence the development of creativity through those two different methods?
Hmm. Like, how do you mean by societal factors? I'm sorry, I'm just.
Yeah, no problem. So, any pressures that you feel or expectations or norms that you notice in society or things that common threads that you feel would impact the development of creativity through either or both of those pathways?
Hmm. That's a good question. I feel like in the school setting, like from peer to peer, I don't know if it's. I feel like creativity isn't, or like even in general, like creativity isn't what schools were made for, nor is it like what's most of jobs are made for. Like
Hmm.
schools were developed as institutions to create factory workers, which that in itself decreases creativity. So like some of the ways that, correct me if I'm wrong on if
The facts
the,
of it.
the facts of how schools were made. I might be wrong in that, but regardless, the way schools are set up, it's like used to make that base knowledge. So like it doesn't really promote creativity as much. You kind of need to seek it out. Like there's plenty of options to be creative, but like if you're just taking like core classes and like other sort of classes, like you weren't really, in my opinion, I mean there's plenty of ways to be creative, but personally, like through storytelling and like music is how I like being creative. So unless you're seeking those out, they're not a lot of ways that you can be creative. I feel like I could be wrong again. Like I don't take other classes, so I could be wrong. And like, and what was the second part of that? Like how?
So education is the one part that you spoke to a bit,
Yeah.
and the other part is that hands-on experience piece
Hands-on.
or practical experience.
I feel like practical experience definitely helps. Like practical experience helps learning, and like I feel like the more you learn, the better, the more creative you are. And I feel like seeing things. How do I put this? Yeah, like seeing the way, like having like hands-on experience gives you different perspectives and helps understanding on like certain subjects.
Totally.
Which the more understanding you have on something, the easier you can build on it, which I suppose is kind of creativity, is building on what's already there. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Beautiful.
That was a very convoluted answer.
It's a tough question. I appreciate you working through it. Okay, final question for you is... I was expecting a drum roll, but it's okay. It's no problem. Last one. Do you think creativity can be taught?
I don't think it can be taught. I think it can be encouraged, though. Like, I feel like creativity, kind of going back to the second question, I think it was, like, I feel like creativity, like, everybody has different ways of expressing it and different means of doing that. And it can't really be taught. I feel like it's, like, kind of innate in, like, what you're good at and what you're not in terms of creativity. But I think it can definitely be encouraged to either find different things that you can be more creative in, or just encouraged to like continue working on things that you are creative in. That's a terrible way of saying that, but like not working on your creativity, but you kind of get where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it can be encouraged, and like people can either by showing their creativity or by opening different styles of just like not even styles of learning, but like different like different subjects to be creative with. Like for example, mine are like storytelling and like kind of acting, like D&D sort of, and like music, but like there's plenty of other ways to be creative. And I feel like if you aren't exposed to those different ways, then you're not going to be creative if you haven't found what you can be creative in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, convoluted, but got there in the end.
Beautiful. Okay, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being my informant. I'll pause the recording here. And we can keep the podcast going if you like.
Sure.
I would like to hear your thoughts on that process.
Yeah, it's cool. I hope I'm a good informant. Is that the word?
You'd be a great informant. Okay. Just by giving your honest answers, I think you're going to be a great informant. So,
thanks.
Yeah, I feel like that was honest. I appreciated you working through the like thought process of the questions. I know there's some like deep stuff in there that you kind of work through on the spot. So It's not the easiest.
They're good questions, though. It's definitely that's a great thing about this podcast. A little advertisement, but that's a great thing about really everything is that like I lost my train of thought. Shoot.
No problem. No problem. You've been thinking and talking lots. Yeah. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah.
I felt weird. I always wanted to prompt more because I know those are confusing questions.
Yeah.
But for our research, we really want to try to not bias your own answers by the way I'm explaining it, the question. And so I was trying to not do that, but it's hard because I have my own view of those questions, of course. And so when I'm asking them, it's hard to not ask them in a way to like get the responses that I kind of am moving towards.
The responses that align with your ideas of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If this wouldn't impact your study, how would you answer some of those questions?
Yeah, no problem. I can answer them. On my own. Yeah, no problem. We'll use that transcript and then we'll code it. So we'll go through and basically pull out some keywords and some themes and stuff like that for some of your main answers. And then we'll compare it with all the other informants. There's going to be 6 total. And then, we'll go through the answers and see kind of what the themes are, what the differences in the replies are. So It's a basic qualitative study, not anything too crazy. But here's the list. Now it's not secret anymore. Any you're curious of my answer on in particular?
I'd say defining creativity would probably be that was the one that
That's a hard one.
Yeah, like it basically took me the whole pod or the whole recording to figure that one out, but
it is tough. Yeah, I don't know. I think creativity can appear a lot of ways. I agree with that. I think that's something that you spoke to already. You can express creativity in a million different ways. How I would define it, it's hard to just pick, a concise definition for sure. But I would say creativity is the ability to express yourself in a way that is unique to you, like your own novel expression of yourself. I feel like that's what creativity is at its core to me when I look at it. So that could be through music or like D&D and other things like you said when you're coming up with original ideas. I think it can also be in how you like interact with each other though. I think you can be creative in like how you approach relationships and how you do your day-to-day work. It's harder to see, but I think it is there.
Yeah. I suppose the way I think of creativity is like creating things, like active creating things, but I suppose it is more than that. Like it's like just like you said, like expressing yourself in like the different ways of like the different ways to express it. Like for me, it's just creating things, but it's different for everybody.
For me, I would say the creation there is a relationship. Like sometimes I'm creating a relationship or contributing to a relationship, whether it's like with a client or a friend or a family or whoever.
Yeah.
But I still think you can be creative in your interactions in that way. Yeah. But yeah, it's a weird thing to think about.
Yeah.
Any other ones you wanted to hear from?
I forget how the question was specifically phrased, but like, how do you think creativity is like hindered or helped? Like different ways of hindering or helping creativity.
Yeah. Where was that? The educational practice number 10. Are there any educational practices or environments that you believe may hinder the development of creativity? Any that foster it? Yeah, I agreed with your answers. Especially for the educational, I think, like the structure, I think structure can be the enemy of creativity because when we're too rigid in our guidelines, whether it's a time limit, like you mentioned, or actual like limits on how you phrase your answer, like you talked about a little bit as well. I think those are both ways that people can't be creative. Like creativity comes with freedom in one sense, and I also think it comes from confines. Like if you're forced into a certain box and you have to answer in a very, very specific way, sometimes you have to get creative to still get your point across while working within the confines.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting like dichotomy of creativity coming from those both extremes, both of those extremes. Freedom, total openness to be able to do whatever you want and you can be creative, or okay, let's squish you into this little box and you have to be creative to still express yourself.
Creativity will prevail whether there's freedom or not.
There you go. Beautiful sentiment.
Although freedom or creativity is freedom, but so creativity will prevail whether there's freedom or not, and creativity is freedom. So freedom's prevailing no matter what. Great.
Freedom is prevailing with or without freedom.
Yeah. If there's no freedom, then I'll come.
Beautiful. Then the freedom will show up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to add a last thought, one other thing that I think fosters it in educational or in like practical hands-on environments is being intentional about it, like looking for it.
Yeah.
Because I think we can be creative just by being ourselves, but if we just don't think about like expressing ourselves in a creative way, I'm thinking especially of like in a workplace or in just a day-to-day setting, I think it's easy to fall into the like monotony or the like routine of your normal, like what you always do. And I think creative, although there's nothing wrong with that, creativity comes when you step outside of that a little bit. Yeah,
creativity definitely comes from thinking and doing something different than the normal, like expanding what you already know, I feel like, or not what you already know, but just what you're already doing or whatnot.
Yeah, and I liked how you said that earlier, building upon like the knowledge that you already have. So like the baseline that you have, and then creativity is like being able to build off of that.
And like the more
expand on it.
Yeah. And like the more knowledge you have, it's like a multiplier. Like it's I don't know how to.
Yeah, beautiful.
What would you say your favorite question is?
My favorite question? Well, I really like the first question just because I like, maybe I'm biased because I came up with it, but I think it's just cool to hear people's first impressions. Sorry, not the first question. I meant just the definition. Second question. How do you define creativity? It's super basic, but I think it's interesting to get people thinking because it's like, what's your gut reaction? How do you define creativity? Well, you have to work through a bit of processing before, at least I did, before I came up with a real answer. So I think that's fun to just hear people's like raw opinions about it.
I think that's good. That's like one of the first questions too, because it's not like, not that it would be influenced, but like you have less time to think about it. So like for example, like mine changed from when I answered that to like towards the end, just building off of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That was on purpose. We wanted it to be first so we could get that raw impression and not have them, already thought about it a little bit.
Yeah.
So it definitely you will probably get a different answer depending on when you ask it, but I think it's interesting. Okay, I think that's all I don't think there's any other questions I really wanted to answer. I haven't thought about them a lot, honestly.
Fair enough.
But any other thoughts?
Don't think so. It's really cool doing that.
Yes, it's fun. It's fun. I think, like I said, I felt a bit weird interviewing you.
It did feel especially very one-sided, but like this.
I know, and I want to be able to talk back, but
it's like normally the podcast is like back and forth ideas, but I don't mind that. Like it's cool to just like, it's like creativity, right? Like if you're talking to different people, you'll get different ideas, so it removes the bias if you're not talking as much. So
right. Yeah, I only want to hear your thoughts. I don't care about my thoughts. They're not important. They're already biased because we've thought about it a lot and talked about it, came up with questions and stuff. Well, thanks again. Really cool. I appreciate you doing it. And I'll pass the reins back to you, the host.
No, you're the guest host. You're the host for the day.
Oh, man.
You have to finish this.
I'm not going to be good to wrap it up.
I always go on too long anyway.
Okay, beautiful. I'll keep it short then. Thank you so much for watching. appreciate you joining us on this episode of Ramblings of Random Minds podcast. And we will see you. We'll see you next time. Make sure you hit the like, the thumbs up, and the subscribe.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I'll
give you the last word as my guest.
Creativity.
Creativity. How many more times can we say it?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
We'll end it there.